Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Eerie International, episode 484 this week. My name is David from the United States.
I'm Andi from Germany.
And I'm Dave from the UK. It's League Cup final day, everybody.
Is this a football thing,
It's a football
Dave?
thing. It's Arsenal versus
yeah.
Manchester City. I'm going to go on record and say I'm excited for a final we're probably going to lose.
Well, we have many football fans that are listening that I'm sure are right there with you, and that makes sense to them in a way that it didn't make sense to me. I recognized all the words.
Yeah,
but...
yeah. If you imagine the Orange Bowl and how the Orange Bowl is the level that the Orange Bowl is to the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay. I was like, American football, are you switching to, or is this
No,
a European Orange Bowl?
So the League Cup final is the equivalent of the Orange Bowl to the FA Cup's Super Bowl. So
Got it.
It's a lesser cup competition, but it's still one that you want to win if you can. So
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck to
Thank you.
the team.
Just
that
like
you're
in wrestling,
supporting.
there's never enough cups to be won for a team.
Oh Jesus, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
They need to invent more competitions.
Yeah.
More belts.
Welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, we are a horror show that talks about horror movies and horror books and horror games and horror stage shows and horror plays and horror audio dramas and video games. And maybe I said some of those already, but horror stuff. We get into it. As you heard, we've been doing it for 404 to 484 episodes now, including bonus episodes. So feel free to go back and find what you can. It's all free. Wherever you found this, there's more of it there. But yeah, welcome to the show. If this is your first time listening again, we're happy that you're here. This week we were talking about a 2016 film called The Love Witch. Very excited to talk about that later on in the episode. Before that, though, quick bit of housekeeping stuff. We're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Instagram's probably where we're most active. If you have longer form thoughts that you'd like to send our way, feel free to do so over at eerieinternational@gmail.com. And that's basically the gist of it. Yeah. So let's get into what we got into this past week when it comes to horror-related items. I believe, Dave, you have something this week, as do I, so kick us off. What did you get into?
Okie dokie. So I finally got round to watching something that I'd had my eye on since it was announced and it came to cinemas, and in typical Dave fashion, I should say, I completely forgot that it was on, didn't go to watch it, and by the time I realised it was in the cinemas, it wasn't anymore. So I was on Netflix the other day watching Peaky Blinders, which isn't the thing I'm going to talk about. And I noticed in the selection of things that they were saying, look, you should watch this, you should watch this. For some reason, it came up with The Last Voyage of the Demeter from 2023.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which, for those that aren't aware, it's a film that takes the captain's log entries from the novel Dracula and expands them into a full telling of what happened on that journey. So it starts off in, I think, Bulgaria, where the Demeter is docked, and all of the boxes of what later comes to be discovered as Earth from Dracula's homeland are being delivered to the dockside and then loaded onto the ship. It introduces the main character of the movie, who is Corey Hawkins, who plays a character called Clements, who is a black British doctor, who is one of the first black men to gain a degree in doctoring from, I think it was Oxford University. And he's turned down initially to be an extra hand on the Demeter because they're a little bit short for the journey. But then later, through happenstance and a heroic act, he is brought on board as a ship hand. And then it follows the entire voyage all the way through to the end of the movie where they arrive at their destination. Oh God, what was the name of the place that they go to? It's a British place on the coast. It's like Yarmouth or somewhere like that. I can't quite remember. I'm not a Dracula aficionado. I apologise anybody who doesn't want to hear me rambling about things that I don't know 100% about. But anyway, it's a very good, well-made movie. I think it's very what's the word I should go for? The tone of the movie is very dark and oppressive. The entirety or the near entirety of the movie is set on the Demeter, which is not a large vessel, but it's large enough that you can have several different areas of the ship focus on, and if you're in one place in the ship, it takes a little bit of time to get to the other, so that plays into some set pieces. I really enjoyed some of the little things that they did, including like they knock on the ship, and then like this knock kind of echoes through the bowels of the ship, and they use that as a signaling device, which then later comes back to kind of bite them in the arse. No pun intended. Dracula doesn't bite people in the arse; he bites them in the neck. It would be a whole different movie if he was biting people in the bum.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't pull its punches. There's a few character deaths. I mean, you know that a majority, if not all, of these characters are going to die because the movie starts actually at the end of the movie with the ship shipwrecked on the coast and the British police attending, and one policeman has already been on board. He finds the captain's log and he comes back and he throws up from the things that he's seen. It's just a really beautifully oppressive movie, I think the look of Dracula is fine, but it's I think they have decided with this movie that they want to go for Dracula being more of a mythical creature than a man who can transform into different shapes. There's a scene at the end that kind of confirms this theory of mine, because at no point does he ever look properly, truly human. He becomes more bat-like through the movie as he kind of regains his strength during the travels. But yeah, I would recommend that people check it out. I think in some areas of the world it's known as Dracula Voyage of the Demeter. I prefer the title Last Voyage of the Demeter because it really kind of... It doesn't bury the lead at all. It's like, no, most of these people are going to die, if not all of them, and this is their story. And it takes a lot of the immediate worry away from you when you're like, well, you're probably all going to die, so why am I too worried? But it doesn't... I'm sorry, I'm rambling here. At the same time as saying that, I never felt like it harmed my enjoyment of the movie, the fact that I was like, well, they're all going to die, because you still have the question of, well, how's this character going to die? How's this character going to die? Is this one going to die? Oh, yes, they did. Last thing I'll say is, if you are a fan of Alien, specifically Alien, I would really recommend this movie, because I feel like it cribs hard on that film. The whole haunted house motif just transferred in this sense to a ship. So they can't escape. In fact, there's one character that may try to escape, and they deal with that in a very interesting way. But yeah, I don't. Have either of you guys watched it?
I have not. Andi, have you?
I have not seen it yet. No. Again, a movie that I want to see mostly because Andre Overdahl made it,
Yep,
and
me too.
I love his autopsy of Jane Doe so much. But then same as Dave, I didn't get around to watching it at the cinema. And in Germany, it's not on Netflix. The only movie service I have a subscription to. So yeah, nope, not seen it yet.
Bugger.
Yep, same deal for me, and same reasons as Andre Overdahl. Who we've done I think 3 of his movies on the show. Autopsy of Jane Doe. Didn't we do Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and Troll Hunter?
Yeah,
as
I think
well.
so.
I'm pretty sure.
I
So
think, did you guys
maybe it was
do Troll Hunter? Yeah. I didn't do Troll Hunter, but maybe you did
Okay.
when I was away.
I think we
possible.
may
I
have
might
done.
be mixing it up with
I've
Troll too.
I've definitely watched Troll Hunter, and I feel like it's not the kind of movie that I would go out and watch on my own. It would be as homework for an episode. So
Yeah, maybe you and I did an episode, but I've
Possibly.
always liked his stuff, and this was actually pretty high on my list when it first got announced in the trailer and everything, because I thought, as you have mentioned, like, it's such a cool idea to be, because it's such an awesome part in the book, at least from when I remember reading Dracula as a kid, but and then in movies they usually have something like this, and it's a cool moment, or maybe even like a scene. But I liked the idea that it was like, let's take this, what's essentially almost like a short story, and expand it out, because it makes sense. Like, you would think that it would be too much, or like not enough for a full length movie, but it's like, no, they were on the ship for a while, and he's like hunting them down one by one, like having it be an alien sort of modeled kind of thing is a pretty cool idea. I didn't realize until just a second ago, as when you mentioned it, I pulled the Wikipedia article up and was looking through it and remembering, like, oh yeah, shit, fucking David Dastmalchian, however you say his name, he was in this, and I'd forgotten about it since it came out. That the like original script has been circulating and been around since like the 90s, and it was somebody who had a colleague who worked on Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola one, and like was inspired by that. So I had no idea. It seemed very much like a kind of new, like, you know, somebody's got a cool idea on the blacklist for a while kind of, you know, script or whatever. But apparently it's been kind of sitting around and moving around, and new writers and everything for a long time. So yeah, it's on my list as well. I thought it looked cool. When it came out, I remember people being kind of mixed on it, which I think dampened it a little bit for me, where I was like, well, maybe I don't need to run out and see it immediately. But it still stayed on my radar for sure, and is higher up now that you liked it and watched it. So
definitely, and as all good movies these days have to have, there is the suggestion that there could be further entries in this saga with the end of the movie. So we'll see what happens. I've not heard any talk about it, but I've not been looking for any talk about it. So you know, it's entirely possible that it never got off the ground. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it for people that enjoy Dracula stories, for people that like Alien especially. Like I think that there's a lot of similarities that carry over. Yeah, I would definitely say it's worth a watch. By next week, I hope to, because while I was on Amazon Prime recently, I discovered that the most recent version of Dracula is on there now. So hopefully by next week I'll have another vampire movie to talk about.
Luc Besson,
Indeed.
Yeah, where he's just like really in love with a girl. I think that's kind of the movie.
Dracula in love. Yeah,
I think it's a pretty chill Dracula movie. Yeah, from what I've heard. Sweet. Cool. Is that it for you this week, Dave?
That's everything for me this week, yeah. Not much, but
Alrighty.
it's something.
I've got a couple quick things. I had a date earlier this week, and the person that I won't get into the date. It was not a connection, but she is into horror movies and wanted to watch a Halloween movie, where we were talking about the Halloween franchise, and her favorite Halloween movie of all time was Halloween, I believe, and I keep forgetting this, I think it's the 6th movie, The Curse of Michael Myers, the one that has Paul Rudd and all the cult shit. So there's like a cult that's controlling Michael Myers or whatever, which was the next in line of the Halloween movies. I've seen all of the new ones. I've seen the Rob Zombie remakes, and then I've seen 1 through 5 of the original, and I hadn't seen 6, H2O, or Resurrection. So those are the 3 I still had pending. So I was like, hell yeah, let's watch Halloween Curse of Michael Myers on this first date. So yeah, it's pretty bad. It's not a good movie. I don't think this girl is going to be looking this up to hear me kind of trashing on this movie that she loves. I feel sort of bad, but yeah, it's a mess. It's yeah, I don't know. Have you guys seen it? Have you watched this far in the franchise?
No,
I have not. I mean, at the time when I was younger, those movies I think weren't available in uncut editions. I don't know what the state of that particular movie in Germany is today.
Okay.
So it hasn't crossed my path yet in a way that I wanted to see it. So I have not seen it.
I'd always heard about it. So there were two things. The first is I knew that there was another cut. So it was one of those movies similar to, I don't know. I haven't seen the Nightbreed versions. That's the first thing I thought of. Maybe it's not a great point of comparison, but these films that, like, especially back then, 90s or early 2000s. I think this one came out in the 90s. That there was always rumored that there was another cut, and then eventually someone finds it, or like a boutique sort of label like puts together a version of it and they release it. And this had one like that called the producer's cut. And it was there's like a rights thing going on with the Halloween franchise, and there was the production company wanted one version that was the producer's cut. Then there was also Dimension, who was releasing it at that point. They had a different cut that ended up winning, so that's what was released. It's just a fucking mess, dude. Like, it's I don't know. I guess it depends on what you're into with this franchise. Like, it's similarly for me as Nightmare on Elm Street. I started to say Scream as well, but there's definitely a lot of the newer or like the sequels that I did enjoy with Scream. But you have the original film, which is just, I mean, for me, the original Halloween is like in my top 5 favorite horror movies. I think it's just fucking masterfully done. And then the other ones are fun, like they're slasher movies. This is the one where it like really kind of goes off the rails, where I don't know if they weren't sure what to do with Michael at this point. Like, there's a plot line that had been going on with the prior 2 films with Jamie. What's her last name in the movies? I'm pretty sure she's Laurie's niece, and that was a whole thing. Like, there's also so many different continuities with this fucking franchise at this point, because there are some that there's like 1 through 6 is like its own continuity, and then H2O ignores everything after 2, and then there's the Rob Zombie remakes, obviously, and then, which are their own thing, and then the new David Gordon Green movies ignore everything except for the first one. So like, there's some continuities where Laurie is Michael's sister, and other ones where she's not. So this is in that original, as at that point in time, only continuity. And we had been following Jamie's character, who's played by Daniel Harris, in the prior film, I'm pretty sure. And so they kind of like start to continue that, but then immediately abandon it. So spoiler alert, Jamie gets killed pretty quick at the beginning of this one. But she has a baby before that. That's not explained, like how she got pregnant or what happened. Like, you kind of assumed that maybe it was like a ritualistic cult thing. But even all that shit is just kind of wild. You're watching it and you're just like, what? Like, none of it feels organic or like in any way, shape, or form like something that makes sense for. But even with a wild left turn like that, there's just so many gaps and things that just kind of happen, and you don't really know why. But Paul Rudd's character, who's very young, and I would also say very bad. It's a weird performance in that, like, I think Paul Rudd has always, for me, been pretty consistent. Like, the first time I probably ever saw him was in Clueless, which would have been right around this movie, like maybe the same year after. Like, it was very, very close to this, and he's great in Clueless. Obviously, Clueless is a much different movie. He has a different role, but he's playing Tommy Doyle in this sequel, who is the little kid that Laurie's babysitting in the original Halloween. And it's just an odd role to begin with, like the way they write him. Like, he's kind of a weird, like, creepy guy, but also is like obsessed with Michael, not in a homicidal way, but in a way of like, it's almost like a proto idea of what they did with Jamie Lee Curtis and the newer ones. Like, he's not like a doomsday prepper kind of thing, but like, he's clearly following everything and obsessed with the stuff that happened when he was a kid. And so anyway, he finds the baby that she has, that she abandons in a fucking train station bathroom before she dies. And so he's taking care of the baby. Dr. Loomis comes back into the picture, played by Donald Pleasance. This was his last movie. He's real old. He's good in it. And it's cool to see him. But yeah, there's a fucking cult in the movie that uses like fucking Celtic, or I don't know specifically. I don't remember what historical runes they're from, but there's the Mark of Thorn that's like the rune that they use for Michael, but even that's very nebulous, not really explained. There's a part in the third act of the movie where Michael just starts killing people in the cult. Zero explanation for why. Like, you don't, like, he's been working for them, I guess, presumably, like the way he walks around and acts and the stuff that he does. But and I even called it out, like the girl I was on a date with, like, she'd seen the movie a bunch of times, and I was like, did I miss something? Like, why is he killing everybody now? And she's like, yeah, I've never really understood that either. I was like, okay, so I guess it just doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's just a wild, weird, bad, messy movie. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, there definitely was like a small part of me as a horror fan, as a Halloween fan, as a slasher fan, where I got, a base level of enjoyment out of it. There's a couple of cool kills. There's one kill where Michael, that's another thing. They go back to the well a lot on a lot of the like references and sort of like quote unquote iconic Michael Myers type things. So like the head cock at people, or like him taking someone and lifting them up and stabbing them on something that's sticking out of a wall. He does that like 3 fucking times in this movie alone. But one of those people, this guy that he picks up and stabs, he stabs him into like a breaker box or something in a basement. It's something that has electricity in it. And then so the guy starts like convulsing and getting shocked, and then his head explodes. I was like, all right, that's cool. It doesn't make any sense, but it's a cool kill.
That's
like,
clever.
That's fun.
It's an evolution of where
sure.
he's,
So I mean, it has its moments in it, but yeah, just kind of surprised. I think I was in some ways, I knew about a lot of this stuff, and I was kind of excited to be like, I want to see this like kind of shitty schlocky Michael Myers movie. Similarly to like, I haven't seen Jason X yet, but like, I'm excited to get to that movie. Like, I don't expect it to be good, but there is a part of me that's like, well, I want to see the Jason where he's a fucking like zombie on a spaceship. Like, it sounds ridiculous and probably bad,
It's
but
not
also
great.
like, yeah,
It's
like
not
also I'm sure I'll have like a certain degree of fun with it. And so there was a little bit of that in here, but mostly not. And honestly, the biggest thing is just because it doesn't make any sense. It ends so abruptly. There's this big fight they have with Michael in the basement of this, like, I think it's actually the hospital he breaks out of in the original movie. And he like kind of limps away, and then the Paul Rudd and the female lead and the baby that they've saved, they leave in a car, and Loomis is supposed to go with them. I'm literally spoiling the end of this movie. And he's like, I got to stay here. I've got some business to attend to, which again is like such a fucking Loomis-y callback. Like, he does this in every time he shows up with Michael. And so he goes back in the building, and then the camera, we like kind of zoom in on a shot of back in the room where they had the fight with Michael, and his mask is on the ground, which he's not taken his mask off at any point in the movie. His mask is on the ground, and then we hear a scream in the background, and then credits. Like, it's one of the weirdest endings to a movie ever. I was like, what? Like, it literally just feels like a trick. Like somebody pranked you and like re-edited the end of the movie. It's just no ending. There's literally no ending. So yeah, I mean, in the sense that they get away, there's closure, but it's very, very weird. So yeah, as I get home from the date, and I'm like, all right, well, let me log it on Letterboxd. And that's when I find out, at some point, I watched the producer's cut. I have no memory of it. So I watched and logged the other version of it. I think it was like before my kid was born, so it would have been a good 10 years ago. But from what I read of the producer's cut, which I doubt I'll rewatch now, having seen this one, just because most of the reviews I saw on Letterboxd with people I follow were pretty consistent in being like, this is a little better than the other one, but they're both bad. So I don't know that I necessarily need to watch it. But there's a pretty good breakdown on Wikipedia of the differences and like what they changed. And that was interesting. It definitely feels like the producer's cut is much more thought through from a story perspective, at least in some ways. Jamie survives a lot longer. Like, there's definitely some big shifts. But then the previously mentioned guy on the breaker box whose head explodes, like, that head explosion specifically was a reshoot that they added in. So like, that's not in the producer's cut. So there's different things where it was like, well, some of the few things that I did like about the theatrical, it sounds like they're not in the other one. I think they downplay the culty stuff a little more. So yeah, it kind of just sounds like all around, this was just not really destined to be to work in any form that it was in. But yeah, I don't know. It is weird. Like in a lot of ways, like with slasher movies and these franchises, the ones that are like this are like the biggest bummers for me. You see it in comics a lot too, where it's like you'll read a comic and you're like, well, that wasn't bad, but there was nothing about it that was. I will forget that I read this by the end of today. Like it's just so middle of the road, or like they take no chances or swings or do anything, outside of kind of like what people expect. Happens a lot in superhero books. Like I won't name books, but there's been comics I've lettered that I maybe lettered for like 20, 30, 40 issues. Where I can't tell you a single thing that happened in that book because it was basically just shifting popular characters around and having team ups and whatever. And there's like obviously a core audience that's enough, for them. And I think that's the case with these slasher movies too. But these are the ones I think more than anything for me are the bummers, because it's like, I don't need it to be good necessarily, but I really like Halloween 3. Like, and I get that it doesn't have Michael Myers. It's kind of in a different category, but there's, we did it on an early episode of the show. I've seen it a few different times. Like, it's a batshit weird ass wild movie. And that to me is infinitely more interesting, even if it's not necessarily a good movie, than this kind of made by committee. Let's have Michael Myers do the same shit we've seen him do in 5 prior movies before now, fucking 4 prior movies before now. And people will show up, and yeah, again, like I said, there's a little bit in there where I'm like, yeah, I'm down. I like Michael Myers. I like Halloween, but so much of it was just kind of like, this is just nothing. Like there's just nothing going on here and nothing interesting. And so yeah, not a good movie. I did watch a great movie later on in the week though. And that's the other thing I was going to mention very quickly. This is the 3rd, 4th time maybe I've seen this. Daniel wanted to watch a movie one night. He's like, I don't know what to watch though. And I was like, well, you're in luck, kid. I've been playing this game for 30 fucking years, helping people find a movie to watch. I was like, what kind of movie do you want to watch? Like sci-fi or horror or fantasy? And he thought about it for a while, and he's like, I want to watch like a horror sci-fi. So like horror and sci-fi together. And I was like, okay. He's like, but I've already seen Aliens. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I mean, there's other Alien movies. I was like, I'm trying to remember what we ended up landing on initially. I mentioned Cloverfield. I was like, you might like Cloverfield. And then he was like, what's the other movie? He's like, is that the movie that you've told me about that has the kids making a movie? And I was like, oh no, that's Super 8. I was like, that might be a good one too. I was like, it's not horror, but I think you'll like it now. So he was like, okay, let's watch that one. And so when I was looking for my Super 8 Blu-ray, I saw Prey on my shelf. And he's already seen Predator, Killer of Killers, and Predator Badlands. And Prey's definitely more violent. So there was part of me that I was like, I don't know. But then I thought back to my dad. I'm like, he's literally the age that I was at when my dad showed me the first 2 Predator movies and all the Alien movies. Like, I think we'll be fine. Like, maybe this is kind of, it's so weird thinking about how like I was raised, especially my mom, like was very like overprotective with me with movies and like wouldn't let me watch shit. And for me now as a parent, there's times where I'm like, all right, time to push him a little bit, like time to show him something that's like slightly beyond what he's watched, that might freak him out a little bit, but like, that's good. Like he's getting exposed to more stuff, whatever. So I showed him the cover and I was like, this is from the same guy whom I kind of explained the context. And he was like, okay, let's watch that. I was like, it is more violent. I was like, do you think that you'll be okay with that? He was like, yeah, that's fine. And he loved it. I mean, I don't think you've seen it yet, Andi, correct?
I've seen Prey.
Oh, you did watch it? Okay. I
saw it like a couple of years ago on TV. When it was on TV, I was able to catch it.
Did you like it? I can't remember now.
Yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it quite a lot.
Yeah, I know before that Dave and I had talked about it a bunch, so I think I was just stuck in that memory. I really like it as well. I think like just kind of from top to bottom, like the script, the casting, the tone of it, like the way that they mess with the mythology. Like I've gone at length about Dan Trachtenberg and like how awesome I think he's done with the Predator franchise and kind of revitalizing it in a lot of ways and doing cool shit with it. But Prey of those 3 is probably, I don't know. I want to see Badlands again because I liked Badlands quite a bit. But there was something about Prey when it hit that was just like, oh man, this is so awesome that we have another like really good Predator movie. And I love her character, Naru. I think like she's such a great character. It's interesting too after watching Badlands, because it's like a pretty similar in some ways sort of foil character to Deck of the Oucha from Badlands, where she wants to prove herself. People around her don't believe in her, don't believe that she can do it, and having that sort of arc, but has the violence and like intensity of the original film in a lot of ways. I think all the stuff with like the older Predator tech that's, you know, still advanced but hundreds of years old. It's all stuff we've talked about in the past in the show, but it always just hits all the right notes for me. And yeah, it was super fun. So good night. He really liked it. And yeah, and also I was like, he wasn't fazed by this at all. Like, I need to fucking up my game on the next one and like show him something that's gonna maybe give him a couple nightmares. Like I need to I need to push him a little bit, I think. But yeah, super fun, great movie. I highly recommend all three of them, honestly. I think Killer of Killers, when we did an episode on that, I'm pretty sure, it was one that I liked quite a bit. And then the second time around, I was like, oh shit, this is so cool. Like the way that they structured all this and made me appreciate it even more. So yeah, Prey and Halloween 6. I cannot remember the name or the number of this goddamn movie. And that is it for me this week. Otherwise, just been working and hanging out. I saw a friend from high school I hadn't hung out with since probably college yesterday. That was really cool. And just been busy moving around. Haven't had a ton of time to watch stuff. And I think that's it for this section of the episode. So we can shift right into our main topic this week. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we were talking about The Love Witch 2016. As Wikipedia describes it, American comedy horror art film, written, edited, directed, produced, and scored by Anna Biller. It stars Samantha Robinson as Elaine Parks, a modern-day witch who uses spells and magic to get men to fall in love with her with disastrous results. It was shot on 35 millimeter film, printed from an original cut negative. Got crazy visuals in this thing. This was the one thing we mentioned probably last week or whenever we announced that this was in the lineup for our upcoming episodes. Has a very specific and like highly curated look. And that was the thing, I think, even if you hadn't seen the movie, if you'd seen a trailer or even the poster, you could tell right away. This is a 1960s sort of vibe, the same sort of like soft lighting and vivid colors and all that. And for honestly, for probably the past 10 years, that was like the main thing, maybe the only thing I really knew about it. Was that it had this very distinct visual style and look. I'd heard good things. I'd heard people talk about it in ways that sounded surprising, in the sense that like they were surprised by what the movie was and what their expectations were and how those were challenged or whatever else. So I really almost had no idea going into this what exactly it would be like, other than the look. And it's a weird week where I have a lot of thoughts and also feel like I have no thoughts. So let's get into it. Kick us off, Andi. What did you think overall of The Love Witch?
It sounds like we have the same thoughts. It is a weird one. Yeah, as you just mentioned, I knew about it since it came out. When we were all more active on Twitter back in the day, especially horror Twitter, and I think the horror community was more active. Certain podcasts were still around, and I listened to a lot more of those, heard more interviews, heard more people talk about things. And The Love Witch was one of those movies that when it came out, it made a bit of a splash, and people knew about it. Anna Biller was very active on Twitter, so I read her tweets. But I also knew relatively little about the actual story of the movie, and the big pull was the aesthetics, the visuals, that it looked like a movie from the 60s, although the story takes place in modern day. Suddenly you see a modern car or a smartphone, or not a smartphone, but a mobile phone, and you realize, oh yeah, this is not a movie set in the 60s, although a lot of the film looks like it's set in the 60s. Not only the film stock, but also the set decoration, the sets and the costumes and everything. And that is definitely a plus for the movie for me. It looks beautiful, and dare I say it, most women in this movie are exceptionally pretty, which I
Hmm.
kind of found a little unsettling. Not that I was aroused or something, just that she cast almost only very pretty ladies in this movie. Felt kind of weird. I'm sure that there was a thought behind that, but it was something that stuck out to me. They introduce a new female character, and I think, well, another pretty face.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. But anyway, the first thing that kind of had me hesitate a little was realizing it's a 2 hour movie. And that for me is one of the problems of the movie, that it takes its time very much so, and it it takes the, or at least it felt to me that way, that it takes its 60s inspiration so far that it tells its story like a movie from the 60s, but those were 70 minutes long.
I was getting ready
I
to say that's the exact thought I had earlier. I was like, if we're truly gonna do this movie should be barely over an hour long. Anyway.
it reminded me so much of how Herschel Gordon Lewis movies feel like, which we still haven't done one on the show, and we need to at some point. Uh,
Mhm.
the way that they are structured, that the way the acting is done in those movies, it very much felt like those. But again, those are 70 minutes, barely 80 minutes, and this one is 2 hours long. And then, so I wasn't completely drawn in by the story because I couldn't quite connect to the characters, because I never quite understood any of the characters. I know it's a feminist movie and there's a feminist message in there, and at least reading the Wikipedia article, there were a few sentences that tried to explain to me some things that why is the character portrayed that way, when she is a feminist character and there's a feminist message. I'm too dumb for this movie. Maybe I probably would need to read more about the intentions, why that character is portrayed that way, why the story is told that way. I was more or less just, I watched the movie, but I was waiting for it to end. I didn't hate it, but it didn't really excite me either. It's I think it's one of those movies. Um, if you really like that movie and you told me about it excitedly and told me all about the messages and why things in that movie are the way that they are because they mean that and that, I think that would be really exciting. Watching the movie, the way that I did, not that exciting. Sad to say. Anyone
This is
else?
very familiar. Dave, go next.
Slightly more infused about the film than it sounds like either of you are, but I have to agree with most of what Andy has said already. Um, I so there's there are a couple of scenes which I want to bring up specifically, and funnily enough, both of them are in the tea room, and they're both between the same two characters. So the first time is when Elaine has first arrived, and she is like hungry, so she wants to go and get something to eat. So she goes with Trish to the ladies' tea room, as it turns out to be, ladies' exclusive tea room because men don't deserve tea. And I mean, no, I'm being silly. It's, you know, I think women probably deserve to have some female-only spaces so they can just relax. They've been through fucking enough. But yeah, during that scene, Elaine goes through this whole thing about how, oh well, you know, you should make a man happy and do everything that he wants and allow him to do whatever he wants, and that will truly make him happy. And I was like, this movie was written by a woman, right? Am I missing something? Like, okay, there's going to be a twist here where it turns out that like she doesn't believe in any of this stuff. And no, she does believe most of this stuff, but then she contradicts herself a little bit with how she's like, well, I'm going to drug the guy first, and if he's too much of a pussy and too much in touch with his feelings, then I'm not going to want him. And it's like, well, if you want your man to be truly happy, then you allow him to be whatever he wants to be. And if he wants to be a pussy that's too in charge of his feelings, then surely that's part of the whole credo that you've been talking about in the place. But anyway, I absolutely loved the aesthetic of the movie from the word go. Like the opening titles, I was hooked by it. Because I didn't know what year this movie was made, but I assumed it was a movie that was made fairly recently, for whatever reason that was. But when we went into watching it, I'm like, oh shit, this looks like it was made in like the 60s or 70s. And then like the girl that plays Elaine, she looks like an actress that was of the 60s or 70s. And actually, just a side note very quickly here, I think what Andy was saying about how all of the characters, the female characters, or at least most of them, are like impossibly pretty. I agree with that, but what I will say is I think the reasoning for that is because, and again, for the third week in a row, I'm going to reference Star Trek the original series, and I apologise for that, but still, like, it is the window into the 1960s that I often refer to. Have you ever seen an episode of Star Trek, the original series, where there was an unpretty woman in a role that had a speaking part? No. They didn't cast unpretty women back in the day. In 1960s and 70s stuff, especially when it was sexploitation kind of stuff, which, okay, TOS is not sexploitation, but bear with me. And I think that they've probably made that conscious decision with this film, rightly or wrongly, that they should, most of the female cast, all of the speaking cast, they should be pretty women, going all the way up to sensationally beautiful women, because that fits with the ethos and the era of the film that they're trying to replicate. The rear projection stuff in that opening scene I absolutely loved. Whatever cameras it is that they used for this, and I haven't done the research this week, I apologise everyone, but on the plus side, I won't be interjecting every 5 minutes saying, well, actually, I found a thing that says this. I assume that they must have either used cameras that were from the era, or more likely, because looking at I can't find the budget for it, but I wouldn't have thought that they had like a multi-million-dollar budget for this. Maybe they found a filter for digital cameras that allowed them to replicate the look, or maybe it's a combination of that and lighting, or I'm not entirely sure. But however they did it, I think they absolutely nailed the assignment where it comes to the lighting and the look of the filmic look of this. It almost feels more like a TV movie from the 60s or 70s era. The second scene that I wanted to talk about, and this is why I've talked about all of that stuff first, is just after Elaine has left and Trish has still got the ring, she picks out her phone, which Andy has already mentioned the fact that there are cell phones in this movie that up until that point I thought was absolutely a straight 1970s movie. And I was like, oh shit, what the fuck? And like I'd picked up on things in the background already that had made me think this is not a movie that was made in the era. This is a movie that was made more recently. There are scenes where, it would be incredibly expensive to take an entire town centre and rent it out and get all of the traffic removed and hire out a bunch of cars that were specific to that era. It's a lot of financial effort that needs to go into something which is a 30-second scene. So they didn't do that. What they did was they hired one or two cars that were of the era and they just put them in parking spaces in between modern cars from the 90s and 2000s. So I was like, okay, this is a modern-made movie, and that's where my realization about how much I loved what they'd done with the cameras came from. But then there's this scene with the cell phone, and I'm like, okay, what the fuck are we doing here? This isn't a movie that's set in the 60s or 70s. I love the aesthetic, but I don't understand the aesthetic if you're going to set it in modern day where there are things like DNA evidence and cell phones. It just kind of threw me for a bit of a loop, and that's where they kind of started losing me a little bit. I was like, okay, well, you've committed to the bit to a point, but then you've seemingly abandoned it, and honestly, for no real reason, because that cell phone call didn't need to be made. She could have found a landline in the tea rooms and made the same phone call if she needed to. I would have forgiven the fact that there were cars in the background. I already had that were made in the 90s and 2000s, because I understand that not every movie has the financial muscle to, kit out the entirety of a scene in what is a real life town. Like it's not guerrilla filming, but it's kind of in between guerrilla filming and full on close down the area. It's a film set for right now, kind of thing. And it goes on too long. I agree completely with what Andy's already said about that. Like, again, the movies from that kind of era, you would be expecting 70, 80 minutes at the most, unless you were talking about like biblical epics, which were made on like huge budgets of the time and had members of the NRA in the cast, and it goes too long, and I don't think it has enough to say to justify that runtime. The feminist stuff was completely lost on me. I'm not sure at what point they. I mean, there is a scene where they talk about how women have to take back their power, and their power is sexuality, but that doesn't really feel like a. Oh, I don't know. I'm not a woman. I can't comment on feminist theory. I don't fucking know. I just support people. I support women when they need the support, and it's I just who fucking knows? Who knows? There is probably I'm just dumb. I'm dumb and I don't understand. But ultimately, like this woman ends the movie murdering the love of her life, not getting anything, and like, what message is it's telling us? Like, women, take charge of your sexuality. You could murder your love of your life too. Like, it doesn't feel like it has a cogent point to make unless it's saying something about how the head of this order, which was preaching feminism, was a man, and perhaps he was feathering his own nest and preaching feminism with a leaning that benefited him and the men around him, like some kind of false feminism, which was actually patriarchy led. I don't know, but I love the look of the movie, and the acting I liked for what it was and what they were doing for the time. The camera effects, like when the first dude, the college professor, when we were seeing things through his eyes, and there were kind of like twinkling lights all around the camera that were kind of prismatic, so you saw them breaking down into like reds and greens and yellows and blues. That was beautiful and really well done. I would love to know how they did that, because it looked like it was in camera. It didn't feel like it was an effect that was done in post, but I could be completely wrong on that one, and maybe one of you or someone listening can tell me if that's the case. But yeah, I just kind of came out at the end of the movie kind of confused as to exactly what it was trying to say. I knew what it was doing, but I didn't know what it was saying, if that makes any sense. I'm going to stop talking now, because I'll probably say something to get myself in trouble.
No, I think you had a pretty similar experience to me, and maybe to Andi too, from the sound of it. Like, one of my first thoughts watching this, like 30 minutes in, I was like, God damn it! It's fucking 3 cisgendered white straight dudes are gonna have to talk about this movie. Like, it's
yeah.
we've had movies like that in the past where I'm just like, we're not the right combination of people to be discussing this. Like, it's not wrong for us to. It's not wrong for us to discuss it and everything else, whatever. Like, I don't have a problem with it, but it was very clear to me that it was like, whether it's a target demographic thing, whether it's a feminist theory thing that's going on, whether it's a male gaze, female gaze thing that's going on. Like, there's plenty of concepts and ideas and things happening in this that I could tell. I could both simultaneously recognize, okay, I think this is what's going on, but I also am not knowledgeable enough in some of the specifics of it. I think all three of us, I don't even want to say I think, I'm positive all three of us would identify as feminists. I would imagine all three of us to some degree or another have a basic or working knowledge or history to some degree of, different feminist theory, different waves, all that kind of stuff, the history of it. Obviously, as it comes to horror, we have different films and writers and books and Men, Women, and Chainsaws and different stuff that has analyzed a lot of this stuff too, that we've been exposed to. But I don't think any of the three of us are super knowledgeable in what potentially is being said or what's going down in this movie. So I think that's definitely part of it. I also do think, and Andi hit on this as well, and you did a little bit too, Dave, but like I definitely, as Andi was talking, I was like, I had the exact same thing where like, there's also a part of it for me where I'm like, there's aspects of this movie that aren't done very well, I don't think. It could be that I will, like, that was another thought I had as I was watching it. I was like, this is a fucking, like, time to read a couple essays about this movie, like, kind of film experience. It's not, I'm not minimizing Prey. I think it's a great movie, but it's not Prey or something where it's like the text is there. Like, there's no subtext. There's no, metaphor necessarily that's happening other than some basic ones that just get, like, pull you emotionally into the characters or the stories. Like, this is a movie where it's like, okay, I'm going to need someone more knowledgeable and smarter than me, especially in these areas, to explain, like, why this scene is impactful in the way that it is and why her reaction here to this male character is significant in a way that I wouldn't have necessarily picked up on. I think both because of my own lack of knowledge, I think also because I'm a dude. Like, there's multiple reasons where it was like, there's context I'm sure I don't have. On the same token, there were also moments in the movie where I was like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like maybe you guys don't know 100% exactly what the metaphor or the thing was going on here. And it was more of a, like, the fact that Wikipedia has it described as has the word art in there, like art film as well, like, makes sense to me, because there's definitely times in the movie where I'm like, I don't know, like, I think that there's something here, but I also feel like the vibe and the sort of like satirical kind, like, it's not a parody, but it's kind of in that realm. There was, I have it on through Apple, like a digital version, and there were special features in there, and I briefly was listening to one of them, which was a like 10-minute long sort of, I don't even know how to describe it. It was showing footage from the movie and then had Anna, I just blanked on her name, Biller? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Biller, talking over it and describing sort of like her approach and the stuff that she read ahead of time that kind of informed the sort of movie that she wanted to make. And she says right off the top in that little special feature, like, it's not a parody. I can see how people would think about that way or whatever else, or that would come to mind. And like, I think that is part of the movie that is weird. It's like, in some ways its greatest strength and also its greatest maybe not its greatest weakness, but it definitely, like, there is a thing that as you're watching it where you're like, okay, I've seen a similar thing done in other movies, but either they leaned into it in a comedic way, like Black Dynamite or Turbo Kid, not necessarily that, but like some of those other movies where we've seen where like they have this aesthetic that they're leaning into and they're having a lot of fun with it, and it's like kind of poking fun at it, but also clearly like a love letter to that era. This has a little bit of that. But it's kind of played pretty straight in some ways, or like played at least like trying to be authentically capturing some of that stuff. And sometimes it works. Like, you'll have certain actors that I think like really were able to dial in to that specific kind of performance, that were able to dial into, the posture and the kind of clipped delivery and all that. But then, like, I feel bad saying this. I don't know why I always feel kind of guilty when it comes to performances, but there are some people in this movie that are fucking terrible, like, that are very bad in a way that, like, does not feel well done. Like, does not feel like they succeeded. It feels like we're like, I feel bad singling somebody out, but the wife of the like cult leader guy, like that, like, she's so bad in this, and in a way where it's just like, this was just not successful. Like whether it was a direction thing, whether it was like she just, I don't know. Maybe Anna Biller saw that performance and was like, this is exactly what I want. Is this exactly what I want this character to be? It's hard telling because it's a movie that's like dealing with lots of different things stylistically and paying homage and also doing this thing, but also being sincere about this aspect and it not being a parody, but also, you know, there's rear projection in the driving scene. Like there's definitely like things where it's all kind of not convoluted, but just there's a lot happening. So I don't know. To me, there were times in the movie where it felt like maybe some of this makes it easier to obfuscate the fact that like it's not as deep maybe as what's being shown, but because the style and the vibe is so strong and the visuals, like you guys have already said, like I agree, like I think it looks pretty great. I honestly could have used a little bit more of it at times, like sometimes the lighting and the color and everything was so perfect, but it still felt modern, where I was almost like wanting there to be a little bit more film grain or, you know, something to it. But I think that's a slippery slope too, because we've all seen movies where they overdo that and it's gimmicky and doesn't really work. So yeah, like a lot of different, there were moments in it that I liked, or there were sets or costumes or production design things that like my eye was constantly drawn toward. But then there were also times in the movie where I was like, I don't fucking understand this movie at all. And not even just because of the feminist stuff, but like things just happen sometimes. Sometimes characters just show up and do things or say things, and there's really no rhyme or reason, and things keep moving. And like at one point I watched some of it last night when I got home from hanging out with my friend. It was late and I fell asleep, and I was like, all right, I set an alarm to get up early to make sure I could watch, because I didn't want to come into this conversation especially being like, oh, I fell into sleep in and not, you know, and not really have, and even having watched it, I feel like I still kind of have that. I'm in that same nebulous place. But I did wake up this morning early, watched all of it. So at one point I had read ahead on Wikipedia, because I was like, I want to make sure I'm understanding like the plot and like what's going on and why these connections happen. Because again, sometimes it's just kind of, you know, just happens. And at one point there's 15 minutes left of the movie, and there's like 4 fucking paragraphs on Wikipedia of stuff that's still going to happen, because it is just so like thing after thing after thing after thing. And I don't know. It's also one of those things too, where like, we run into these movies sometimes where there's these homages or whatever else, where I feel like people that are critical of it online or whatever else, where they're like, this didn't make sense or this was poorly done, where other people who are fans of it immediately rush to be like, that's exactly what they were doing on purpose though. And it's always a weird kind of argument, because it's like, maybe, but also I think that's why the art film thing comes into play, where it's like, I think a lot of the movie is going to resonate with people depending on how much they connect to the things that they are successfully doing and the atmosphere of the entire movie, and if it's able to pull you in and like really like kind of make you fall in love with it. But then, as Andi mentioned before, like this movie shouldn't be 2 hours long. It's way too long, especially a movie that like does not need. Like the way the script is written, the way that it moves, like does not need this much time to tell this particular story. And even the story it does tell, there's parts of you that are just kind of like, I don't totally know what the point was, or like, I get that there's subversion happening. Like there's things that I definitely am picking up on. But yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know. It's the people that I follow on Letterboxd kind of seems similar to the discussion here, where it's like people kind of across the board agree on certain things, but then some people really fell in love with this movie. And I can see that. I can see why. I can see how this would hit and resonate. I was somewhere kind of in the middle, where it was like it didn't hit for me that way, where I was just like, I can't wait to watch this again. Like, and I think part of it is because there are aspects of the movie that are, I think, genuinely kind of bad, especially some of the performances. And it was hard for me to not think that was just failures, as opposed to, oh, well, we're trying to do a 60s thing. It's like, well, you kind of are. So some of these things, like, I don't know that you could necessarily hide behind that. And I'm not saying Anna Biller did. I have no idea. I haven't read enough. But as I mentioned before, a movie I'm going to look up essays on and try to read a bunch of shit, because I would imagine my appreciation or affinity or whatever will likely deepen for it once I can get, you know, more... I don't think this movie should be on the Criterion label, so let me preface my next sentence with that. But this is a movie that I would absolutely read all of the essay shit. in the like the booklet that would come in the movie or whatever. Like it would be one of the first things I did, maybe before I even watched the movie, because I would appreciate having, or I feel like I would appreciate the movie more having some of that context. There was one review I read on Letterboxd I wanted to quickly mention that I thought was funny, where who was it? It was Devin Faraci, so that might be kind of controversial, but I thought it was a funny review. He said, "It would be interesting to see a version of this movie featuring actors."
Oh, come on. Jesus.
Whoa.
Which I don't totally disagree with. I think that there are people in this who are good. I think the lead is pretty good, who plays Elaine. I'm trying to remember her name.
Robinson.
Samantha Robinson, I believe.
Yeah.
Samantha Robinson. I've only seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think once. Apparently she's in that. She's one of the people that gets killed.
There's so many people in that movie. You can't know
exactly.
all of them.
Yeah, and people that are massive stars in other things that are in one scene in it, like very briefly, or hitchhikers, or whatever. So yeah, I thought she was good. Like there's definitely performances in it that I think are good. So I don't agree with that across the board, but that was kind of a similar thing that I had, where it was like there are some performances in this where we're not at Birdemic levels, but like we're closer to that than a real movie in terms of some of these people.
I thought of Birdemic too while watching this movie.
Yeah,
because I thought at least I enjoyed Birdemic. I had that movie was so bad that I had so much fun with it. It was I was laughing so much. We talked about the movie.
Yeah.
And this movie, I didn't have the same problems as you have had with the performances, because you especially mentioned, I believe Barbara is the character, the wife of the cult leader. I liked her, but you mentioned it's three guys, middle-aged guys, talking about this movie. I can give you one female erection firsthand that because my wife watched, as she does usually, watches the movies with me, and I think it was maybe 10-15 minutes in, after that first tea room scene, when she said, "All right, I'll go to the other room and play Zelda." She checked out early.
Yeah.
and I sensed that even earlier. Because especially with this one, the last week's movie, this movie, and next week's movie, when we already decided we will do these three movies next, I told her the titles of the movie, and she didn't know any of them, and she decided she wouldn't even look them up. She would just sit down with me and watch the movie and know nothing about it. And I was sure that this was probably not a movie for her. I wasn't even sure if it's a movie for me, but I knew I was interested in seeing it.
Yeah.
And then I quickly realized, this is a movie that she will not like. And then 10-15 minutes in, she left.
This film has, if it's done anything, it has made me realise that my command of the concept of feminism probably needs a lot of work, to the point that I've already got several articles open on my desktop here about specifically about feminist film theory, which I will be reading and trying to understand and digest, so that I can go forward with a slightly more educated point of view on these things. One thing that has occurred to me, though, while I skimmed through one or two of the paragraphs in one of these, is the fact that, and this isn't breaking new ground by any means, this movie, by telling a story from the point of view of a woman. There are movies from the era that this wants to be from that do exactly the same thing, the whole femme fatale thing. But I wonder if maybe part of the aim was, we're going to treat the men in this movie the same way that women were treated in other movies from that era. Because looking at the victims, are they padded out that much? Apart from the fact that we know that the college professor is a libertine. Overrated band, by the way. What do we?
I liked the first album.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
I was mad. What's the guy's name?
Pete Doherty.
Yeah, I was mad at Pete Doherty for destroying the Libertines. I hated his solo career.
This is the
I
thing.
refused to listen to his solo music because he destroyed the Libertines.
I'm not a fan of him as a person, as an artist particularly. I'm not a great fan. So the Libertines are a bit of a there are one or two songs from that first album that I do kind of like tap my foot to, and I'm annoyed when I do because I know who it is, but still.
They found back together again. I just recently watched some recent footage from a concert of theirs from recent years. So I've made my peace with Pete Doherty because I think he slowed down a lot.
Oh, I do. I've got feelings about him related to Amy Winehouse that I cannot put into words right now. But anyway, so yeah, I wonder if there is maybe an effort that this movie is kind of like a reversed version of it's essentially putting the men into this position of it wouldn't matter who this man was, he's just there to look at and to serve the plot. But as I said, like my knowledge of especially the film theory side of it is kind of limited to the basic stuff of like, well, if you've just got a woman there to get naked and be there for the male viewer to stare at, if you don't really dig into their character and give them any good reason for being there, if they could be replaced with half a dozen other people, does that make it a compelling character? Is that really a movie that a movie character that is worth your time investing in? So I have some education to do for myself, but yeah, like apart from being a libertine and being a little bit too emotional in his own right, like what did we know about this dude? Whatever his name was, I can't remember his fucking name. That's my point. I can't remember his name. Like you could tell me he was called Keith, and I would believe you, because he was completely unremarkable apart from the fact that he cried and whined, and basically kind of became overnight the kind of character that you would traditionally expect. And I don't mean this as in I expect you to be in this role, but what I mean is if you look at like the history of film, is it more likely that kind of character would be male or female? We know the answer to this. Like that character, the character who's like, oh my god, we had sex and now I completely love you. I've fallen for you. I'm overly emotional about you. That's almost always a woman. That's almost always a female character that's doing that, right? And
that was
maybe that's part of it. I don't know. That's my basic bitch attempt at finding the feminism in this movie.
What a sentence! Even though I know the slang term you were using.
I know, right? Yeah, even my slang is anti-feminist. Oh my god!
That was one of the things Anna Biller said in that clip, or the little special feature that I listened to. Right at the top of it, actually, she mentions how she was reading these different like self-help books for women and like how to keep your man, and that was a consistent thing with them, was like you have to love them less. You have to. And there was another movie she mentioned that she loved from the 50s. Was it Heaven Can Wait? I can't remember now. I think I had Heaven in the title, but that was a similar thing where like the female character in that like had to. So yeah, those particular dynamics at play. Like I did at one point look up, I think just on, was it on the film? It was either the horror, like the horror film subreddit or the film subreddit in general. Might have been Shutters as well. Just to see, like, as I usually do, anecdotal kind of reactions to what people are into. And I saw a lot of people saying, like, a lot of already this kind of stuff that we're talking about, where it's like, it didn't make sense to me that she did this and everything. And then the next comment would be like, that's literally the point, because it's subverting this or that or whatever. And I think for me, part of the problem is, like, it definitely could be my lack of knowledge and not picking up on stuff well enough. It does at times feel like it wasn't necessarily executed as well as it could be, and there's a little bit of not vague, what's the word I'm looking for, there's more kind of wiggle room in terms of like, is that what's happening here, or is this just an artsy move, or is this supposed to be commentary, like, because of the way the film is made and structured and everything else. Like I don't know, I struggle with movies like that, and art film type stuff, like sometimes, like Under the Skin, I've talked about that movie a lot on the show. Like sometimes a movie hits me and like it just, on every level. I'm locked in, but I also totally get and understand like why for other people it's like very boring or it doesn't make any sense or it's too slow or whatever else. The kind of movies that I struggle with, and I've brought this movie up before, but like kind of the cliche example I've used is something like Birdman, a movie that I really liked. I've only seen it once, but I liked it a lot at the time. But the ending, Austin and I still bring it up, like it drove us crazy at the time because the filmmakers were very coy about it and were very like, what do you think it means? And I absolutely never got the sense that they knew. And it was kind of just done in a way to be like, well, let's get the people talking. And I don't know, to me, that's not interesting. Like, I don't need you. Lynch is on my Mount Rushmore for a lot of things. Like, I don't need you to explain everything to me. That's not what I'm saying. But if I get the sense that you don't know and you're just trying to drum up some discussion and get people talking, like to me, we're out of filmmaking at that point, and you're just kind of writing a book discussion question that's open-ended to get people talking. Yeah. And to me, I'm much less interested in that. Like, again, I don't need you to tell me exactly what you were intending to do with that scene, but there were definitely times in this that was the vibe I got, where it was like, I don't know totally that there is a thing here that I'm missing. Like there definitely might be. I'm allowing for that 100%. Like, and I know that there are things that I am not picking up on as quickly as I should, or maybe at all. But there also are just kind of times where it was either kind of sloppy, or maybe it was just that it was leaning into the art film aspect of it. But I don't know. It makes some of the discussion about it where people are like, well, it's supposed to be bad for this reason or what, like those sorts of arguments are hard for me to entertain. Cause I'm like, I don't know. I don't, it's always been a tough thing for me to think that a filmmaker is intentionally trying to do something wrong. I understand like subverting expectations or artistically doing something that doesn't make sense or, but yeah, I didn't necessarily get that vibe all the time with this. Speaking we'll see. Maybe I'll read an essay and be like, I was wrong. This movie's amazing. Like, yeah, I could fall into that camp. It doesn't seem impossible.
You never know. You never know. Yeah. I've definitely watched or read. Who am I kidding? I've watched essays where it's definitely had an effect on how I interact with something. It hasn't necessarily changed if I enjoy something or not, but it's definitely led me to asking more questions about the thing that they're talking about and
right.
Open my mind to other angles with it. In the spirit of the book club that you just mentioned, and the fact that we are essentially the audio version of a book club because it's three guys just talking about what they thought of a thing. I want to pose a question with a little bit of a comment first, because something else that occurred to me while you were speaking just then, and it comes back to the feminist thing. And this is me trying to understand something more than bashing or praising to the gills something. So the execution thing, I think that you make a really good point there about how things aren't necessarily always executed perfectly. And I think a great example of that is there's the scene near the end of the movie where the policeman rescues... what's her name? God, I can't remember the main character's name. From Elaine. Thank you, Andy. Rescues her from a baying mob at the burlesque bar of all places.
Some real bad actors in that scene too.
There are some real bad actors. Even the people unzipping their flies were pretty wooden. No pun intended. No, I completely.
There's one dude.
There's
one dude that at one scene takes a swig out of his beer, and I was like, oh, the fucking Mick Garris school of acting. Like, I thought immediately of Andi's joke. I was like, that dude took a drink of his beer bottle and had...
every glass in that movie was empty. The way they carried their teacups and the coffee cups, there was no liquid in those cups.
It's a live set. You can't have liquid on set. This is how the pros do it.
It was crazy how quickly I saw Mick Garris in this man who didn't have a single line of dialogue, and yet I was like, amazing. Awesome. To be unbelievable at taking a drink of beer.
That's awesome.
Impressive.
But yeah, so she's being held down, and it's very obvious that there's a couple of men who are intent on sexually assaulting her. The camera is focused on them unzipping their flies, coming towards her while she's been stripped down to her underwear, and there are women in the background, burlesque dancers who work at the burlesque bar, who are shouting something like "Burn the witch, burn the witch." Now, my problem with that scene is that if if the witches are meant to be a symbol of sexually unrepressed women, and the hatred towards them by the men in the bar is one based on, we don't like women who are confident in their own sexuality, we want women who are there to serve us and us alone, which is highlighted by the fact that they love the burlesque dancers but they hate the witches. Why would you set this in a burlesque bar where the burlesque dancers, I would assume, are fairly sexually liberated themselves?
I think so. This is one of the things I did read about, is that like that dissonance, whatever you want to call it, like that sort of contradictory thing is, at least for people who are really into the movie from what I read, and it resonated with them, like intentional. So the idea that that sex is part of something that they utilize, and like here speaking of, I guess, witches, but then also it's like kind of a metaphor for women, I think, obviously, like across the board with the witches in this, like, and that experience, again, this is through my filter, but the frustrating, complicated part of it is that also it is connected to their specific desires, or her desires in this movie, with like sex and romance and connection with a man. Like that's part of the thing, which to me is fine. Like that, I think having, I like nuanced shit in movies and books. Like I like it when things aren't super easy, and when it's not just a, well, this character wants this thing for this reason, and it's very simplistic or whatever. Like I'm cool with having characters who are multifaceted. It is kind of also a microcosmy example for me of how like some of the stuff in the movie felt a little messy in a way that is probably intentional, and I think is there, but is also maybe vague, or vague enough, or also maybe not done well enough in some aspects, that it then leads to more sort of like, it makes, I don't know, I think it muddies the waters a little bit in the interpretations or everything else.
I mean,
because I think it's supposed to be exactly what you're saying, based off of these people's take anyway, and that it is a complex thing because it's involved in, sex specifically is involved in multiple contexts and scenarios and how it's used, and that then in turn, you know, obviously is not a great situation for women, and how like they are interacting with this thing that they have to sort of like approach or harness in different ways, depending on the context. Whereas for men, it's very simplistic, and you know, it's the male gaze and all that.
So it's because my guess kind of was that it's essentially like the patriarchy is fine with you being sexually uninhibited as long as it's to their benefit, and that the witches are more kind of using their sexual power for their own gratification, not for that of the men. So that's where that kind of delineation lay.
Or having to utilize it in a way of navigating what they need or what they want. Maybe it's not connected to romance until it is, and I think that's when, for her character specifically, comes with some of the, like, brings in some of that internal like struggle or complexity or whatever. I mean, that sort of thing makes sense to me. It does feel like one of those things where I'm like, look, I'm absolutely willing to admit, that sounds like I'm being brave. I like there's no question that for me as a man, there's probably stuff happening that just on an instinctual level is just blasting over my head that I'm not picking up on at all, because I've never had this experience. I've never had to interact, or I mean, I'll bring in like a kind of a personal thing. It's not super personal about me specifically, but like I've been dating. I mentioned that earlier in the show, like, and I have encountered different connection or different women where like their expectations, I think, of me were based off of shitty dudes and guys that had mistreated them, or like sort of expectations they had of like, okay, well, this is how he's going to act because this is how guys act, and this is like, you know, what I'm waiting for him to do because this is how guys will behave. And it's a very surreal, weird feeling. I'm also not trying to like humble brag and be like, I'm not like other guys, but like it is a weird feeling of seeing and realizing like, oh shit, here's the fucking like patriarchy at play in terms of like how clearly like the experiences that these women have had, that it's very odd. Because I mean, again, I'm not trying to like humble brag, but I'm also like not one of those kinds of dudes. Like I've never been that kind of guy. Like I don't know. It's
Let me join you in
there's
the humble bragging because
yeah, like
I have an anecdote like this.
okay,
A former girlfriend of mine, back when we were together, and at that point we were together for some time. And at some point she looked at me and asked me, "Why are you nice to me?"
yeah,
And
exactly that kind of
that's
stuff.
not a
Yeah,
question
Is
that
that not
I
standard
had
behavior?
heard from women that were in a relationship with me before, because I think,
yeah.
well, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. Isn't that the normal thing, that we're nice to each other? Isn't that why we are together?
Well, also, it's like a common
Yeah.
courtesy to anybody, isn't it? Like, unless they're a complete arsehole, in which
It
case you're
should
not going to be
be
in a relationship with them.
right.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
dude.
Andy,
I mean,
carry on.
No, that's it.
Okay.
yeah. So I definitely think that there are things that like that, where it's like the complexities or the dichotomies or whatever that you're running into, where for me as a straight privileged male, like white cisgender dude that's not had to run into too much adversity in life, and then especially with like gender dynamics and all this relationship kind of stuff, like I'm not going to clock. For me, it's going to register as like, well, this was maybe messily written. Like my mind goes into like film mode. But in reality, it's a thing where I'm just like, I'm not even remotely equipped to pick up on like, oh, I know what that feels like. Oh, I know what that feels like. And I've had those experiences before with other films. So I know what that feels like in the sense of like, of something resonating where it's like, oh, they nailed this. Like, this is exactly how this thing felt for me. And like, whether it was a performance thing or a decision a character makes or whatever else. So I definitely think that there's stuff like that at play, which again, if I had to, like, I have no idea. If I had to guess, there's probably more, definitely more. I don't want to say probably. There's definitely more, I think, going on here where it's just my lack of knowledge, like my ignorance with some of these things, and less so just like a movie that like missed the mark in some ways. Although I do stand by some of the acting. I feel like if I'm a better feminist and more educated, and I read some of the books I have that I haven't read yet, at the end of the day, I'm still going to be like, some of these people are bad actors. Like that's just that's
Good
nothing to do with
intention.
feminism. Yeah,
Good intention, bad presentation. That's okay.
right.
But I think
yeah.
Dave already took the right path. And if that is the only thing that us watching this movie initiated, it's a good thing. When he said that he has already several tabs open on his computer to try to read up on feminism and feminist film theory, and for me here in Germany, it's it's a very weird moment to have watched this movie this weekend and to talk about it this weekend with you guys, because just like 3 days ago, a huge case of abuse was broken in Germany. There was a huge article that is just the talk of the country, because a famous couple of actors, TV presenters, she made public that, so at some point, she had never been on social media, and at some point fake profiles of her popped up, and those profiles obviously posed as her, and at some point it turned out that several of those profiles faked relationships with other people in the same business, in the entertainment industry. Someone sent fake nude pictures and videos and stories of her to these people, at least like 30 men. And that all came out when some guy she met talked to her about it, that they were in this virtual relationship, and she knew nothing about it. And a few years ago, she even made a documentary about it, and then it turned out that her husband was the guy doing all of this. They had been married for almost 15 years. They are very, very prominent in Germany. They had been on TV commercials together, and I think it was last year or the year before when suddenly it was announced that they had separated, and then they were also separate in those TV commercials. They still both were in TV commercials for the same company, but not together anymore. And then last week, she made public that he apparently, of course, allegedly, that her husband had done all these shitty things. And of course, it's a huge discussion in Germany right now, and how men behave and about feminism. And one of the things that tend to come up nowadays in cases like this, and I had seen that happen with the Black Lives Matter movement as well, that people say it's not the women's task anymore to teach men about feminism. It's about educate yourself. You need to read up on these things. All the things are out there. You don't need to have women tell you about all these things. And I think that's a good message, that we should all just take care of our own shit and learn about other people's experiences and try to understand their experiences and try to make their life better. Especially in situations where in our position, just the three of us, and you mentioned that we we belong to no minority at all.
Right. Yeah.
White, cisgendered, middle-aged, heterosexual, and all these things, and yeah.
I'm probably the closest in that I used to be married to a lesbian. That's as close as it gets to to anything outside of the straight white cisgendered male.
It makes
dude
you half
thing.
a lesbian, sure. Yeah.
I mean,
formerly.
I think for a long time I coasted by on the fact that like my general thing in life was I'm going to treat everyone else like I want to be treated, which is a great fucking starting point. Don't get me wrong. Like if everybody just did that, the world would be 10 times better, 100 times better than it currently was. But it can also breed in a little bit of, what's the word? I'm standing still, basically. Like, I'm not trying to improve my understanding of things because I'm like, well, I don't treat anyone like shit, so what's the problem? And you know it's not necessarily enough just to be like, well, I'm just gonna not be a dick to anybody. I'm just gonna treat everybody like I want to be treated myself, and I'm not gonna unless you're Donald Trump, I'm not going to hurl insults into the ether. You know, and it's more than that. It's about understanding how you can. Even if you're trying to do your best, sometimes it's not the worst thing to understand how you can still improve. You know, because if you're not constantly trying to improve, then you're just standing still and everything around you is moving. So I'm not advocating for wholesale change of every single person that's listening to this. I'm not saying how you're living your life is wrong. I'm not saying how I'm living my life is wrong. But I think it's definitely worth just taking the effort to just, wherever you can, just broaden your horizons a little bit, just to understand things that you don't necessarily understand as much right now. And that's what I'm planning on doing after we're done, and hopefully Arsenal win the League Cup. I shall be celebrating by reading a bunch of articles about feminist film theory and feminism in general, and just trying to understand if I can come back to this film and understand more of it than I did coming out of it. And I feel like I already understand a little more of it just talking to you guys about it. And that's always the case when we talk about movies, is I feel like, and I think that this is the case for anyone that walks out of a movie and they've got someone that they're talking to about it. Oftentimes, just that one or two extra points of view, you'll glean something from it that you didn't yourself, because everyone's got a unique point of view that is worth listening to, because they may have picked up on something that you didn't quite manage to yourself. And you know that's how you that's how you make your enjoyment of films improve, or in some cases maybe not, because sometimes people can tell you something about a movie and you're like, ah, shit.
Yeah, along those same lines. At one point, I thought watching the movie is like, and I kind of meant it, or I was kind of thinking it in a double-edged sword sort of way, and I feel less so about that now, because I think that there's definitely just a lot of shit that I'm missing with this movie, as we've discussed already. But at one point, I thought, like, this is a movie that should be watched in a classroom, like, and I went to college for film production. Like, I was in that world for a little bit, at least, you know, in college, and so I, you know, watched tons of movies in classrooms that you're then discussing or whatever else, and like, whether it would be a filmmaking class or like a women's studies class or whatever else, like it does seem very kind of primed to be one that you watch and then discuss, or like have somebody do a lecture on it or a talk or whatever. Like, at least for us, I don't know, maybe this is a thing where for women, they're just like, we don't need that. It's very clear what's going on here. You guys are just dudes who are not picking up on it. But it was a thing where, like, in a very sort of positive, like, as you've kind of already mentioned, where like you've looked up articles already and stuff, there was definitely a part of me where I'm like, I want someone to explain this to me who knows it better and is picking up on this stuff, because I know that there's a lack of that for me here. Or whether it's like at a film festival, a Q&A with the director, like that kind of stuff. Like, I'm sure there's so many moments and anecdotes and things with like decisions made that are rooted in aspects that we're not picking up on. There might be some stuff in there too that's just like, we were trying to do a 60s thing and, you know, this was the vibe or the homage or whatever else. But yeah, totally. I think it's one that's pretty primed up for this kind of discussion. It doesn't feel shallow to me, even though there are aspects of it that kind of do, maybe again by by design in terms of like the 60s thing that they're doing. But yeah, I'm right there with you on all that. And I would say send Andi and I whatever you read and enjoy, because I'm sure we'll read it too.
We'll do.
Just sign
Also,
for that.
just want to one thing that I feel like I need to mention now is I don't want to leave the impression that I believe that I've never been shitty to women. I know there's women out there who would tell you differently.
All of us, yeah, for sure.
And here's the thing: everyone makes mistakes as well. So, you know, it's about making sure that you move on and learn from those mistakes, and where possible, probably apologize for those mistakes as well. But yeah, like, just don't. Starting point for everyone from today: don't be a dick to people. Just, you know, treat everybody as you want to be treated, and see how much better that makes the immediate world around you. I'm not saying it's going to cure world hunger or you know, put someone sane in the presidency, but it will probably make your immediate surroundings that little bit more tolerable.
Yep. Totally agree. Okay. Let's see. Any other big thoughts before we do double feature picks?
Good.
No.
Yeah, I'm good too. Definitely ready to read more and discuss potentially later. But also just I think I mentioned at the top of the segment, it was one of those movies where midway through it I was just like, this is like the worst movie for me to watch and then have to talk about immediately. It's just like I just feel so unprepared. So keep that in mind for anybody who's like, these guys are idiots. Like, we just watched the movie and that is it. Like, so it's very much a reaction to that without probably some context. All right, double feature picks. Andi, what'd you go with?
Practical Magic. Sandra Bullock, Nicole Kidman playing witches.
Oh yeah.
I thought about it, and I don't know. I didn't have many ideas for double features with this one. But that's a movie I did see that movie at the cinema back in the day, actually. So yeah, I don't think maybe I saw it a second time when it came out on home video. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, that's my double feature pick. Not a horror movie.
All right. Cool. Dave, what you got?
Well, we never said that we had to pick horror movies, and that's probably just as well, because I haven't either. So when I was watching this film, I thought to myself, this might be Quentin Tarantino's favourite director, just because of his love for kind of like 70s shit and all of that. I mean, it's throughout all of his movies. You look at some of the musical cues he took for Kill Bill as an example. Like, he just absolutely loves to bring stuff in. Like, I think it was the Ironside intro music that he used for whenever the bride would zero in on someone that she wanted to kill.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the one. Never thought it could be repurposed in such a way, and yet somehow he managed. So yeah, I was thinking like, wow, like this aesthetic is absolutely queued up for Quentin Tarantino to just fucking love this movie. And then earlier somebody mentioned Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which funnily enough is the movie that I went for, just because it just not only has that link with Tarantino, but also it's set in 1970s Hollywood, And as we learned during the recording of this podcast, we wish we're filmmakers. It also has a little guest starring role for the lead of the movie, where she gets murdered. So, all in all, it felt like the perfect pick, really. Just not a horror movie, but we never said that it should be a horror movie. So I feel happy about that.
There you go. I did go with a horror. Well, it's like, I guess, like a more of an action kind of thriller, maybe horror adjacent movie. Andi, I'm gonna need some help with the French. Not the entire nation, but the language. Who made?
Who doesn't need help with the French?
As soon as I said it, I was like, this immediately sounds like not what I'm saying. Who is the filmmaker who made The Substance? Do you remember how to say her name?
Coralie Fargeat.
Thank you. Her first film, Revenge, from 2017. This is a weird double feature in that you could label it as like movies that David is probably too ignorant to understand the themes in. It was a movie that I really liked. I liked the action, the violence, the intensity of it. Thought it looked great. But it was one that, like, everything I had read about it at the time was that it was a rape revenge sort of movie that's playing into those tropes and subverting a lot of them. And it was one that I walked away from later thinking, like, I don't know that I got that. To me, it was kind of a rape revenge movie, or based off of what I understand about these tropes and like, I didn't necessarily see the subversion. I could tell that it was. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen a ton of rape revenge movies, but the one thing I always read about and that is usually very consistently critical about them is that they are made by men, and the male gaze is very present, and sometimes, like, the sexual assault scenes are kind of eroticized, or they're filmed in a way that's supposed to be, arousing or whatever else, which obviously is very gross and weird, and so there was a part of me that was going into that very excited of, like, okay, this is such a cool idea that we're taking this thing that's like I don't know. I don't know a ton of the history about it, but, like, it's always been kind of a weird, problematic section of subgenre of horror. And we have a female filmmaker who's going to kind of subvert a lot of that stuff. And so it was another situation where I was like, I really like what they did here and the execution and the look of it and everything, but I feel like I lack enough knowledge to understand some of the stuff that was either more subtle or just sort of intrinsically baked into the subversion that I didn't pick up on. And I went into The Substance wondering if that was going to be the same. And I felt like the themes in The Substance were easier for me to pick up on. It's also just a kind of a crazier, wackier movie between the two. But it's always been a movie. I've seen it once. It's always been one that's been continued to be in my mind. Every time it comes up, I always think about it fondly and also think about it very self-critically, where I'm like, I know I'm pretty positive I'm at fault here. I just don't necessarily know how. And I want to get past that. Like, I want to watch it with the correct set of eyes and context to make me really kind of understand and appreciate some of the intricacies of what's happening here, because I'm obviously not either experienced enough or just knowledgeable enough to have caught it the first time around. So yeah, that's what I thought about. It's the David Hopkins ignorance double feature, where I have to read a bunch of stuff afterwards to make sure I understand everything. But it's one I've always wanted to rewatch. I remember there's specifically sequences from it that I can still, very vividly remember, of like, oh, that was crazy how they did the shot, or like this fight scene or whatever else. But yeah, I've always wanted to revisit in a similar way. If we have any listeners out there who have watched this, please write in, eerieinternational@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of it, how it hit you. I don't know if our friend Jake listens to the podcast, but I know he gave it a pretty high score on Letterboxd. He was one of the people who immediately I was like, oh, I would like to hear, like, what hit for him with this and what he liked about it and everything. And not in a challenging way, but just curious. I always like hearing his opinions. So if you're listening, Jake, I now have put you on the spot. Sorry. Feel free to let us know what you thought of the movie. But I'm sure that we have listeners who have watched it and have thoughts, and always happy to hear from you guys. So again, eerieinternational@gmail.com if you want to send us some of those thoughts, or all of those thoughts even. You're allowed to do that. I think that's it. Next week, we are doing a film called... I'm blanking. New Life?
Yeah, that's correct.
Is that right? Okay. Man,
Yeah.
it's one of those. Yesterday, my friend Sean asked me, he was like, have you ever seen this movie called, now I'm forgetting it now, No One Will Save You? And I was like, yes. And then I had to look up what it was because I was picturing 5 movies in my head that all had titles like that, where it's like, it has that right amount of words where it's just like, it does not click for some reason. It's like just broad enough. New Life is the name of the movie for, though, that we're doing next week, which I'm very excited to talk about. I watched this one some years ago, and I think it's very underseen. So it's from 2023, kind of a riff on a zombie infection horror kind of film, but with some deeper, different themes. So excited to talk about that. That's what we'll be doing next week. So be sure to check that one out. In the meantime, stay safe out there. Keep watching horror movies, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.